Welcome to your deep dive into the spiritual principles that guide Narcotics Anonymous. Um, we've got your stack of NA literature right here, ready to go beyond the basics. We're not just skimming the surface. We're going deep to understand the why behind the what's.
It's fascinating how these principles, while born from the experiences of recovering addicts, offer wisdom that can be applied to so many areas of life. Think of it as a framework for building unity, finding freedom, and navigating challenges, whether you're in recovery or not.
Okay, let's dive right in with the cornerstone of N, unity and anonymity. They're inseparable, right? Like two
Mhm.
sides of the same coin.
Precisely. Anonymity is what truly allows for unity.
Okay.
Think about it. When your identity is secondary, the focus shifts to shared principles and experiences. That creates an environment of equality and trust, which, as you know, is essential in recovery.
It's so true. And that safe space, built on trust and anonymity, can be incredibly powerful, especially for newcomers.
Absolutely. There's a story in the literature about a member who found solace in setting up chairs before meetings. This simple act of service helped them feel connected, useful, and less likely to use. It's a perfect example of how these principles translate into real-world action and personal well-being.
It's a great reminder that sometimes the simplest actions can have the biggest impact. It's not just about abstract ideas, it's about putting those principles into practice.
Exactly. And it brings up a fascinating question. What are the spaces in your life where a sense of unity or anonymity might be lacking? Could these principles offer a new way to create stronger, more supportive environments, even outside of recovery?
That's something to really ponder. It's easy to get caught up in our own individual worlds and forget the power of shared experience and collective support. Now, on to tradition three. Welcoming the unwelcome. I have a feeling this one hits close to home for a lot of us.
It certainly does. This principle goes beyond simply being polite. It speaks to the radical act of accepting all addicts, regardless of their background, their beliefs, or even their past behavior. And let's be honest, that can be incredibly challenging, especially when we're dealing with people who've hurt us or triggered our own biases.
Totally. The literature uses an anecdote about a member who resented anyone being nice to their ex after a breakup, even though they claimed to want the best for them. It's a perfect illustration of how this principle can clash with our human instincts, especially when it comes to forgiveness and acceptance.
It's a perfect illustration of the conflict many of us face. It begs the question, how do we extend genuine welcome to those we find difficult, even the unwelcome parts within ourselves? It's about cultivating empathy and recognizing our shared humanity, even in the face of those who challenge us.
That's profound. It's like expanding our capacity for compassion, pushing beyond our comfort zones. Okay, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the fascinating paradox of Tradition 4, group autonomy and personal freedom. How can these two concepts coexist?
Ugh. Tradition 4. This one really highlights the balance between individual freedom and collective responsibility. On one hand, each NA group has the autonomy to make its own decisions, tailoring its approach to the needs of its members. Yet, they're all interconnected, part of a larger fellowship with shared principles.
It's like finding that sweet spot between independence and interdependence. It's fascinating how this principle mirrors the recovery journey itself, wouldn't you say?
What's fascinating here is that mirroring, that parallel. As individuals in recovery, we seek personal freedom from addiction while relying on the support and structure of the fellowship. It's a dynamic tension that plays out in so many areas of life. How do you, as a listener, navigate that balance between autonomy and belonging in your own world?
That's a great question. It really makes you stop and think about the different groups and communities you're a part of and how you find that balance. All right, let's dive into Tradition 5, which seems laser-focused. Carrying the message to the addict who still suffers.
This tradition acts as a guiding principle, a yardstick against which all actions within NA should be measured. It's a reminder that the ultimate purpose of NA is to help others find recovery, and everything else, from hosting meetings to financial contributions, serves that singular goal.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yes.
This concept of selfless service as a core purpose can be incredibly fulfilling. It taps into something deep within us, a need to contribute to something bigger than ourselves. And that resonates far beyond the rooms of NA, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This principle reminds us that true fulfillment often lies in helping others. It's about connecting with that innate human desire to make a difference, to leave the world a little better than we found it.
Now, we have a trio of traditions to unpack next: traditions 6, 7, and 8. These seem to revolve around how NA interacts with the outside world, maintaining its own identity and independence.
Think of these traditions as a protective shield, safeguarding the integrity of NA's message and purpose. Why is it so important to decline outside contributions? Why remain non-professional? Why avoid endorsements? It all comes down to preserving NA's focus on recovery, free from any external influences that might dilute or distort that message. It's about ensuring that the fellowship remains a space where everyone is truly equal.
It's like creating a clear boundary, ensuring that the focus remains solely on recovery, free from any agendas or expectations from the outside world. It reminds me of how a wildlife sanctuary needs to protect its inhabitants from external disruptions to truly thrive.
That's a brilliant analogy. It perfectly captures the essence of these traditions. By staying true to its core principles and maintaining its independence, NA creates a sanctuary for recovery, a space where individuals can heal and grow without external pressures.
Now let's shift our focus to anonymity in action. Traditions 9, 10, and 11 really emphasize the practice of anonymity on both personal and public levels. It's more than just a rule, it's woven into the very fabric of NA.
These traditions emphasize that anonymity is a spiritual principle, a cornerstone of NA's foundation. It's about humility, about letting go of the need for personal recognition, and about creating a safe space where people can share openly without fear of judgment or consequence.
It's like creating a protective shield around the fellowship and its members. Imagine the freedom to share your deepest struggles and triumphs without the fear of those experiences coming back to haunt you.
That's precisely the power of anonymity. It fosters vulnerability, honesty, and trust. It allows individuals to focus on their recovery without the distractions of social stigma or personal reputation.
And finally, we arrive at Tradition 12, which serves as a powerful reminder. These traditions are meant to be lived, not just memorized.
Exactly. It's about embodying these principles in our actions, our words, and our interactions. They become a roadmap for navigating challenges, resolving conflicts, and building a better future, both within NA and in our daily lives.
It's like integrating these principles into our DNA, letting them become second nature. The more we practice them, the more they shape our choices and interactions, creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. It's about letting these principles become so ingrained in our being that they inform every aspect of our lives, guiding our relationships, our work, and our interactions with the world.
Now, to really bring these traditions to life, let's dive into some personal experiences and see how these principles play out in the real world. I'm curious, have you encountered any situations where you were really challenged to practice Tradition 3, welcoming the unwelcome?
Oh, absolutely. There was this situation on a service committee a few years back that really put this principle to the test. There was this member, we'll call him Bob, who was incredibly opinionated and often quite critical of others.
I think we've all encountered a Bob or two in our time. Those personalities that can be a bit abrasive and make group dynamics a little challenging.
Exactly. And honestly, I found Bob incredibly difficult to work with. His negativity was draining, and honestly, it felt like he was constantly trying to undermine the group's efforts.
So how did you navigate that situation? Did you confront Bob directly?
I was tempted to believe me. But then I remember Tradition 3, welcoming all addicts. And it really challenged me to look beyond Bob's negativity and try to see the pain beneath the surface.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
It was. It made me realize that Bob was likely carrying a lot of hurt and resentment. And instead of judging him, I tried to offer him compassion.
And did that change the dynamic at all?
It did. Slowly but surely, Bob started to open up. He shared some of his struggles, and we actually connected on a deeper level. It was a powerful reminder that Tradition 3 isn't just about being polite. It's about recognizing our shared humanity even in those who challenge us.
That's such a beautiful illustration of the transformative power of this principle. It's about looking beyond the surface and recognizing that everyone, even the Bobs of the world, is fighting their own battles. Now, I have a story that really tested my ability to practice Tradition 3.
I'm all ears.
It involved another member, let's call her Sarah, who really hurt me. It was a betrayal of trust, and I was furious.
I can only imagine betrayal can be such a painful experience.
It was. And honestly, I wanted nothing to do with Sarah. I was ready to write her off completely. But then that pesky Tradition 3 popped into my head. It's about welcoming all addicts, even the ones who've wronged us.
It's a powerful reminder that we're all imperfect, that we all make mistakes.
All right. So I took a deep breath and decided to try to forgive Sarah. It wasn't easy, believe me. But I knew that holding on to resentment would only hurt me in the long run.
It's like carrying a poison inside yourself. It harms us more than it harms the person we're resenting.
Exactly. So I reached out to Sarah. We talked, we cried, and we eventually found a way to move forward.
That takes a lot of courage.
It did, but it was so worth it. Forgiveness, in the end, is about freeing ourselves from the pain of the past.
And it's about creating space for healing and reconciliation.
Now let's shift gears and talk about tradition 4, group autonomy. This one can be a bit tricky to navigate, wouldn't you say?
It certainly can. It's about finding that balance between independence and interdependence, right? Each group has the right to make its own decisions, but we're also part of a larger fellowship, and our decisions can impact others.
It's like a delicate dance between autonomy and connection. It makes me think of the way our bodies are made up of individual cells that need to function independently, but also work together for the overall health of the organism.
That's a great analogy. It highlights the interconnectedness of seemingly separate parts.
Have you ever encountered a situation where tradition 4 was really put to the test?
Oh, many times. But one that stands out involved a major decision our area was considering a few years ago. It was a significant change to our service structure, and there was a lot of debate and disagreement about the best way forward.
That sounds intense. It's like when a family has to make a big decision that affects everyone, and there are strong opinions on all sides.
Exactly. Some groups were strongly in favor of the change, while others were vehemently opposed. It really highlighted that tension between respecting the autonomy of each group and considering the needs of the area as a whole.
So how did your area navigate that?
That's where tradition 2 really came into play. Remember, it emphasizes a loving God as we understand him, as our ultimate authority. So we turned to our understanding of a higher power, we prayed, we listened to each other, and eventually we found a solution that worked for everyone. It wasn't easy, but it was a powerful reminder that we're not in control, and sometimes the best solutions emerge when we surrender to something bigger than ourselves.
That's beautiful. It's like surrendering to the wisdom of the collective.
And it reinforces that trust in the process.
Speaking of trust, let's move on to tradition 5, carrying the message to the addict who still suffers. It seems like this tradition really captures the heart of NA's purpose, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This is the heartbeat of NA. It's our primary purpose, our reason for being. It's about recognizing that our recovery is inextricably linked to the recovery of others.
It's like that saying, you can't keep it unless you give it away.
Precisely. Our own recovery is strengthened and deepened by helping others find theirs. And this tradition reminds us that we can carry the message every day in countless ways, both big and small.
Do you have any personal stories about how you've lived out tradition 5?
Oh, countless. But one that always comes to mind happened a few years ago at a coffee shop. I was working on some NA service stuff when this woman approached me and asked if I was in NA.
It's amazing how sometimes those opportunities just fall into our laps.
It really is. So we talked. I shared my experience, strength, and hope, and gave her information about local meetings. I never saw her again, so I don't know if she ever made it to a meeting.
But that's not really the point, is it?
Exactly. The act of sharing, of planting that seed, is what matters. It's about being willing to carry the message to anyone who might be receptive without any expectation of outcome.
It's about being a conduit for hope. Now, I have a story that comes to mind when I think about tradition 5.
I'd love to hear it.
This one goes back to my early days in recovery. I was struggling with the concept of self-support. I was broke, unemployed, and felt like I had nothing to offer.
It's a common struggle for newcomers. It's easy to get caught up in the financial aspect of self-support.
Right. But then I heard a speaker talk about how self-support isn't just about money. It's about giving back what we've been given.
It's about recognizing that even if we don't have financial resources to contribute, we all have something valuable to offer.
It's about finding your place in the community. So I started small, setting up chairs, making coffee, doing whatever I could to help. And it felt amazing. Like even though I didn't have much to give financially, I could still contribute.
And those small acts of service often have a ripple effect, inspiring others to get involved and contribute in their own way.
Now, let's talk about tradition 6. This one is about guarding against the pitfalls of money, property, and prestige. It's about ensuring NA remains free from outside influences that could compromise its message.
It's about protecting the purity of our primary purpose. It's easy to get caught up in the material world and lose sight of what truly matters.
I imagine this tradition has been put to the test many times over the years.
Oh, you have no idea. There have been countless situations where NA has had to make difficult choices to protect its independence. I remember a time when our area was approached by a wealthy donor who wanted to give us a large sum of money.
Wow, that's quite a dilemma.
It was. We were all excited about the possibilities, imagining all the things we could do with that kind of money. But as we discussed it, we started talking about the potential strings that might be attached.
It's like, what would we be giving up in exchange for that financial support?
Exactly. It really made us examine our priorities. In the end, we decided to decline the donation.
Wow, that's a bold move.
It was, but it was the right move. Because Tradition 6 reminds us that our primary purpose isn't to accumulate wealth or possessions, but to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. And sometimes that means making difficult choices that prioritize our principles over potential financial gain.
Now, I'm curious, have you encountered any situations where you had to navigate Tradition 6 in a more personal way?
Absolutely. It involved a local business that wanted to partner with us for a fundraising event. Let's call them Healthy Habits. They were all about promoting healthy living, had a great reputation in the community, and seemed genuinely interested in supporting NA.
Sounds like a perfect partnership.
It did, at least on the surface. But as we started talking about the details, things got a little tricky. They wanted to use our logo on their marketing materials and have NA members speak at their events.
I can see where that might create a problem.
Right. It would have been great exposure for NA, but it would have blurred the lines between our organizations and could have compromised our anonymity. So after much discussion, we declined the partnership.
It's like you said earlier, sometimes you have to say no to good opportunities to protect something even more valuable.
Exactly. It was a reminder that Tradition 6 isn't about being uncooperative or isolationist. It's about making conscious choices that allow us to stay true to our primary purpose.
That leads perfectly into Tradition 7, self-support. It seems like such a simple concept, but it can be so profound in practice.
It really is. It's about taking responsibility for our own well-being and contributing to the sustainability of the fellowship. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in supporting the very thing that supports us.
It makes me think of the way a garden thrives when each plant contributes to the overall ecosystem.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and that our individual contributions, no matter how small they may seem, are essential to the overall health and vitality of the fellowship.
Have you ever encountered a situation where Tradition 7 was really put to the test?
Oh, many times. But one that stands out was a few years ago when our area was facing a financial crisis. We were running low on funds and weren't sure how we were going to continue operating our service office.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It was. It's easy to panic in those situations and look for quick fixes from outside sources. But then we remembered Tradition 7, which encourages self-reliance and trust in a higher power.
It's about having faith that we will be provided for.
Exactly. And that we don't need to rely on outside sources to solve our problems. So instead of panicking, we got creative. We brainstormed ways to increase our own fundraising efforts. We held events, sold merchandise, reached out to our members for support. And you know what? It worked. We were able to raise enough money to keep our service office running, and we learned a valuable lesson about the power of self-sufficiency.
That's amazing. It's a testament to the strength and resilience of the NA Fellowship.
It truly is. And it's a reminder that when we come together, united by a common purpose, we can overcome any obstacle. Now, I'm curious about your experience with Tradition 7.
I have a story from my early days in recovery. I was attending a meeting in a pretty rundown part of town. The meeting space was tiny, dirty, and barely furnished. I immediately thought, this group could really use some help. I was so tempted to reach out to my church or some local businesses and solicit donations.
It's a natural instinct to want to help.
It was. But then I remembered Tradition 7. It's about respecting the autonomy of each group, trusting they will be provided for in their own way. So I held back, offered no unsolicited advice or assistance, and you know what? That group thrived. They found their own way to make things work.
Sometimes the best way to help is to simply be there, to offer support without interfering. It's about recognizing that each group has its own unique journey, and that interfering with that journey can sometimes do more harm than good.
Now let's talk about Tradition 8, which emphasizes the non-professional nature of NA.
This tradition is all about ensuring that NA remains a fellowship of equals. It's about recognizing that we're all just addicts helping each other, that no one has all the answers.
It's a powerful equalizer. Everyone's experience is valued, and no one is positioned as an expert.
Exactly. It levels the playing field, so to speak, creating a space where everyone can feel comfortable sharing and learning from each other. Have you ever encountered a situation where this principle was challenged?
I have. It involved a therapist who was a big supporter of NA. She was so enthusiastic that she started recommending NA to all her clients, regardless of whether they were addicts or not.
Oh, I see where this is going. While it's great when professionals recognize the value of NA, there are boundaries that need to be respected.
Exactly. And to complicate things further, she started attending our meetings and offering advice to members, even though she wasn't in recovery herself.
I can see how that would create confusion.
It did. It felt like she was overstepping her boundaries, and it started to create resentment among some members.
So how did you navigate that situation?
We had a respectful conversation with her, explaining the importance of Tradition 8 and the non-professional nature of NA.
And how did she respond?
It took a little time, but she eventually understood. It was a reminder that NA is a space for recovering addicts to support each other. And while professional support can be valuable, it's important to maintain clear boundaries.
It's about respecting the autonomy of the fellowship and recognizing that the true power of NA lies in the shared experience of recovering addicts. Now, I have a story about Tradition 8 that really tested our group's ability to be flexible and think outside the box.
I'm all ears.
It involved a public relations project our committee was working on. We were trying to come up with creative ways to reach more addicts and spread the message of recovery. Someone suggested we create a series of educational videos about NA.
That's a great idea. Video can be such a powerful tool for sharing information and personal stories.
It is, but we ran into a snag. None of us had the skills to create professional quality videos. We started talking about hiring a videographer, but we wondered if that would violate Tradition 8.
It's a valid concern.
Right. But then we realized that Tradition 8 isn't about preventing us from getting things done or accessing needed expertise. It's about ensuring that the focus of NA remains on recovery and that the message isn't overshadowed by professionalism or outside agendas.
So how did you resolve the dilemma?
We decided to hire a videographer, but we were very clear about our principles. We made sure he understood the importance of anonymity, the non-professional nature of NA, and that his role was to support our vision, not dictate it. It was a great example of how Tradition 8 can be applied flexibly.
It's about finding creative solutions that honor our principles without limiting our ability to adapt and evolve.
Now let's talk about anonymity, a cornerstone of the NA program. Traditions 9, 10, and 11 really highlight the importance of protecting anonymity, both for individuals and for NA as a whole. It's more than just a rule, it's a spiritual principle that underpins the entire fellowship.
It's about creating a safe and trusting environment where people can share openly without fear of judgment or repercussion.
Precisely. Have you ever experienced a situation that highlighted the importance of anonymity for you?
Oh, absolutely. There was a time when I was asked to speak at a public event about addiction. I was honored, of course, but I was also hesitant.
I can imagine. It's a delicate situation. It's wonderful to have opportunities to share the message of recovery, but it's crucial to do so without compromising our anonymity or that of the fellowship.
Exactly. So I prayed about it, talked to my sponsor, and we came up with a plan. I was able to share my experience without revealing my identity or affiliating myself directly with NA. It was a powerful reminder that anonymity is about creating a safe space, not about hiding or being ashamed of our recovery.
It's about protecting the fellowship and allowing people to share freely without fear of their stories being used against them. I had an experience that really challenged my commitment to anonymity. I was feeling really good about my recovery and was tempted to share my story with the world. I wanted to be a role model, an inspiration.
It's a natural desire to want to help others by sharing our experience.
It is. But then I remembered Tradition 11. It's about protecting the anonymity of the fellowship, ensuring that the focus remains on the message, not the messenger.
It's about humility.
Exactly. So I resisted the temptation, kept my anonymity, and focused on carrying the message in the ways that NA suggests. It was a humbling experience reminding me that my recovery isn't about me, it's about something much bigger than myself.
It's about being part of something greater than ourselves. Which brings us to Tradition 12, which reminds us that NA's principles are more important than any individual or group. It's about putting principles before personalities and recognizing that NA is bigger than any one of us.
It's a powerful principle that helps us navigate conflict and stay true to our purpose. Have you ever experienced a situation where Tradition 12 was really put to the test?
I have. It involved a clash between two very influential members in our area. Both were passionate about NA, but had very different ideas about how things should be run.
It's like that saying, too many cooks in the kitchen. Sometimes strong personalities clash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in this case, the conflict was starting to divide the area. It was creating tension and negativity.
So how did you navigate that situation? It sounds like a delicate balancing act.
We had to gently remind everyone of Tradition 12. We emphasize the importance of putting principles before personalities, of remembering that NA is more important than any one person's ego or agenda. It took time, patience, and understanding, but eventually we found a way to resolve the conflict and move forward in a spirit of unity.
It's a powerful reminder that even the most challenging conflicts can be overcome when we remember our principles. Now I have a story about Tradition 12 that was much more personal and involved my role as a group treasurer.
Oh, the glamorous world of group finances.
Right. And there was this member who was constantly questioning my decisions. It felt like he was always second guessing me, and it was driving me crazy.
Everyone's a financial expert when it comes to other people's money.
Exactly. I was ready to quit. But then I remember Tradition 12. It's about letting go of ego, recognizing that it's not about me, it's about the group.
It's about service, about putting the needs of the group ahead of our own personal desires or feelings.
So I took a step back, listened to the members' concerns, and tried to explain my reasoning calmly and respectfully.
And did that change the dynamic?
It did. The member came to understand my perspective, and we were able to work together effectively. It was a reminder that Tradition 12 isn't about silencing dissent or suppressing different opinions. It's about finding a way to work together in a spirit of unity, even when we disagree.
Now, let's step outside the rooms of NA for a moment and talk about how these traditions can be applied to our personal lives. Even though they were developed within the context of addiction recovery, they're really universal principles that can benefit anyone.
Absolutely. They offer a framework for navigating relationships, resolving conflicts, and creating a more fulfilling life. For example, the principle of welcoming the unwelcome can help us be more compassionate and understanding in all our relationships.
It's about letting go of judgment and embracing the diversity of human experience.
The principle of group autonomy can help us be more respectful of other people's boundaries, recognizing that everyone has the right to make their own choices. Self-support encourages responsibility and independence, reminding us that we have the power to create the life we want.
And carrying the message. Well, that's about finding meaning and purpose in our lives, about contributing to something larger than ourselves.
Have you ever consciously applied these principles to your personal life?
Definitely. I try to live by Tradition 3 in all my interactions. It's a constant practice, but it's made a world of difference in my relationship.
I'd love to hear an example.
Well, I had this coworker, we'll call her Janice, who was incredibly negative and critical. She was constantly complaining and stirring up trouble. It was draining, and I was dreading going to work.
It's like every workplace has a Janice.
Right. But instead of judging her or trying to change her, I remembered Tradition 3, welcoming the unwelcome. I decided to try to understand her.
That's a powerful shift in perspective. It's about recognizing that everyone is fighting their own battles.
Exactly. So I started listening to Janice, really listening without judgment. I tried to see the world from her perspective. And the more I listened, the more I realized that she was hurting. She was lonely, insecure, and afraid.
It's like sometimes negativity is just a mask for pain.
So I started treating Janice with kindness and compassion. I offered her support and tried to be a friend to her.
And how did she respond?
Slowly but surely, she started to open up. She shared some of her struggles, and we connected on a deeper level. It was a beautiful reminder that Tradition 3 is about recognizing our shared humanity, even in those who challenge us.
Now, I'm curious about your experience with applying other traditions outside of NA.
Well, for me, Tradition 5, carrying the message, has become a way of life. I try to live it out in all my relationships, personal and professional.
I love that. It's about recognizing the power of sharing our experiences to connect with others and make a difference in the world.
Exactly. I believe that honesty and vulnerability are the keys to building authentic connections. So I try to be open about my recovery with the people in my life.
That takes courage. Not everyone is ready to be that vulnerable.
It does, but it's also incredibly freeing. When we're honest about who we are and where we've been, it breaks down barriers and allows others to feel safe sharing their experiences as well. It's a ripple effect.
And it reinforces the idea that Tradition 5 isn't just about carrying the message to addicts, it's about carrying a message of hope and healing to everyone.
Now let's talk about how these traditions can be applied on an even larger scale to build a better world.
These principles have the power to transform entire communities. Imagine a world where everyone practiced welcoming the unwelcome. We could create more inclusive and compassionate societies.
It's about embracing diversity, recognizing our shared humanity, and understanding that our differences are what make us stronger.
The principle of group autonomy could help us build more democratic and participatory institutions, valuing individual voices while working together for the common good. Self-support could help create more sustainable and equitable communities.
And carrying the message. Well, that could inspire us to be more active and engaged citizens, working together to address the challenges facing our world.
It's about recognizing that we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place.
Do you have any thoughts on how we can bring these principles into the wider world?
I think it starts with each one of us. It's about living by example. When we practice these principles in our own lives, it has a ripple effect, inspiring others to do the same.
It's like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. And we can also get involved in our communities. We can volunteer, donate to worthy causes, and speak out against injustice. It's about using our voices and actions to advocate for a better world.
Now, before we wrap up part 2 of this deep dive, I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier, Tradition 12. It's about putting principles before personalities. This principle is crucial in any organization, but it's especially important in NA.
Absolutely. It helps to keep our focus on the message of recovery and prevents power struggles and personality clashes from derailing our primary purpose. Remember, NA is bigger than any one of us.
It's like a ship sailing towards recovery. Tradition 12 is the compass that keeps us on course, even when storms arise or the seas get rough.
It's a reminder to stay humble, to let go of our egos, and to remember that we're all in this together.
And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive. We'll be back soon for part 3, where we'll delve even deeper into the transformative power of these principles and explore the often unspoken 13th tradition. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the spiritual principles of Narcotics Anonymous.
We've journeyed through the 12 traditions, exploring how they create a foundation for recovery and offer a framework for a more fulfilling life both within and beyond the rooms of NA.
We've heard personal stories, pondered profound questions, and uncovered the transformative power of these principles in action. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's explore some final thoughts and reflections, some nuggets of wisdom to carry with you.
Remember, the true value of these principles lies not in simply knowing them, but in how we live them out in our daily lives.
It's not about reciting the traditions verbatim or treating them as a checklist. It's about embodying them, letting them guide our actions, our thoughts, and our very way of being in the world.
It's a lifelong journey, a process of continual learning and growth, of stumbling and getting back up, of deepening our understanding and expanding our capacity for compassion.
One of the key takeaways for me has been the profound importance of humility.
Yes. Tradition 12 gently reminds us that we're not perfect, that we're all works in progress, always evolving and learning.
It's about letting go of ego and self-importance, that constant need to be right or to have all the answers.
And it's about recognizing that we're all just human beings, doing the best we can with what we have in this moment.
That shift in perspective, that embrace of humility, is a powerful antidote to the disease of addiction, which thrives on self-centeredness and isolation.
Humility allows us to connect with others on a deeper level, to ask for help when we need it, to learn from our mistakes, and to grow from our experiences.
It's the fertile ground from which true transformation emerges. Another key takeaway has been the importance of service.
Tradition 5, carrying the message, is at the heart of NA's purpose, but it extends far beyond simply helping other addicts find recovery.
It's about embracing a life of purpose, of contributing to something larger than ourselves. It's about recognizing that our well-being is interconnected with the well-being of others.
And it's something we can all practice, regardless of our circumstances or our perceived limitations.
Whether we volunteer our time, donate to a cause we believe in, or simply offer a kind word to someone who needs it, every act of service makes a difference.
Service is a powerful antidote to self-obsession and apathy. It connects us to something bigger than ourselves, infuses our lives with meaning, and reminds us of our shared humanity.
Now, we want to leave you with a final challenge, something to ponder as you continue your own journey of growth and discovery.
We've explored the 12 traditions of Narcotics Anonymous, but there's an often unspoken 13th tradition that's whispered among members, a principle that guides us towards continued growth and spiritual awakening.
This 13th tradition is about recognizing that recovery is a lifelong journey, a process of continual unfolding. It's about embracing the unknown, the mystery, the adventure of spiritual exploration.
It's about continuously deepening our understanding of these principles, finding new ways to apply them in our lives, and sharing them with others.
So here's our challenge to you. Take some time to reflect on these principles. How have they resonated with you? What insights have you gained? How can you apply these principles to your own life, to your relationships, to your work, to your community?
And how can you share these principles with others? Not through preaching or lecturing, but through the quiet power of your example, through the way you live your life, through the choices you make every day.
Because ultimately, the true power of these principles lies in their ability to transform lives, to create a ripple effect of healing and hope that extends far beyond ourselves.
And that transformation, that ripple effect, begins with each and every one of us.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the spiritual principles of Narcotics Anonymous. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and perhaps even a little bit challenging.
Remember, recovery is possible, hope is always available, and the journey is worth taking.
Keep coming back, keep exploring, and keep the spirit of these principles alive in all that you do.